Hi guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of an experiment. I've brought out a $10 diffuser and a $100 diffuser, and I'm going to be shooting with both of these today to see what the differences are. Stick around to the end of the video to see a results comparison between the two diffusers, but for now I'm going to start off by seeing how each diffuser handles out in the field. I'm going to start with the cheap diffuser, and if you go on Amazon or other sort of online shops and search in Macro Diffuser, usually you'll find a lot of these. They usually aren't branded, or some of them are branded, but they usually range between $5 and $10. This one here I bought a few years ago, I think for about 10 quid or maybe even 5 quid, I can't remember. And as you can see, it comes in this little black bag, and when you take it out, it will just pop into shape like that. And these are just very quick and easy to set up. You know, you just put your lens through the hole there and you're ready to shoot pretty much. The only downside is that it doesn't clip on to the lens, so it could fall off, or it could, you know, swing upside down when you shoot in. The wind could blow it around. So sometimes when you're shooting, you might have to have one hand on the diffuser and then one hand on the camera, which is not really great. So I'm currently looking for my first subject to photograph using the cheap diffuser. But just before I did the intro to this video, I spotted a beetle on the ground and I quickly got a shot. I wasn't able to film it because it was so quick and I had to react fast. But that was taken using the cheap diffuser. So I'll put that image up on screen now, and I think it looks pretty decent. It's really bright out today, so I had to use my eye EVF, and it was quite awkward because it was low down to the ground. So yeah, but I managed to get a shot that was in focus. I've just found a black and yellow ladybird on this leaf here, and as you can see, I've got the diffuser on my lens now. And like I was talking about earlier, if you let go of the diffuser, it can easily just fall upside down. So you do have to kind of hold it or wedge it in a way so it doesn't fall. Like I've wedged it there and it's not really falling now. So it is a bit of a faff, but that's what you get when you get a cheap diffuser. I'm gonna have to change my flash brightness a bit here. I usually shoot on 1/32 and I don't usually have to go lower than that. But because of this diffuser and the material of the diffuser, I'm having to increase the brightness of my flash here. So I'm now shooting on 1/16 power, and the ladybird is staying nice and still for me. There we go. Not sure if those frames will stack nicely because the ladybird is eating, so it is kind of moving around a bit. But I should be able to come away with a single shot nonetheless. There's a lot of stuff landing around this area. I think because it's sort of like a heat trap. There's not much wind here and it's very sunny. I've seen quite a few damselflies land here actually, and it's the first damselflies I've seen this year, which is really cool. So I think if I just hang around here long enough, I should be able to get a photo of one. Red damselfly just landed on the leaf here. It's in a really nice spot. Let's try and get a photo. Stuck around that spot for about 10 minutes and I managed to photograph a couple damselflies in the end. I photographed a blue one and a red one, and as you can see, the eyes have these hot spots in them. That's down to the diffusion material not being great, and it's also down to me not being super magnified because obviously you can see how big this is, and the further away that is from the subject, the smaller it will appear in the reflections on the eyes or just any part of the subject. So ideally I want to be quite close to the subject to maximize the diffusion and avoid hot spots. I don't even know what these are. I've just found these sort of leaf hopper looking things. I think they're some sort of nymphs, so I'll get a photo and you can help me identify them. Oh, actually, there's a nice little caterpillar up there. Let me quickly get a photo of that before I get a picture of these nymph things. To make things easier, I've come round the other side, and this means I can shade the subject with my body rather than using my hand or something like that. I managed to get a really nice shot of that caterpillar in the end, but my hand is literally cramping because I was shooting one-handed and I had my fingers sort of pushing the diffuser down like this, so it was at the right angle. And yeah, that was just really awkward and put a lot of strain on my hand. But I got this shot in the end, so that's all that really matters. And yeah, I almost forgot. I was going to photograph those nymph-looking things, so we'll get on to photographing those now. I'm going to be photographing this one here because it's in quite a shaded part of this tree, so I won't have to worry too much about shading the subject. Makes things a lot easier for me. I'm going to try and shoot quite magnified for this one because I feel like I haven't shot super magnified for a lot of these shots. I'm actually really surprised at how good that shot turned out there. It doesn't even look like it was taken on a $10 diffuser. It looks quite nice, really diffused. There is some signs though that it is quite cheap. And one of them is the really deep shadows. But it's not really the end of the world. You can correct that in post-processing if you shoot raw like I'm doing. So yeah, there is workarounds for that. I've spent so much time around this tree now that I just keep spotting stuff. And I've now spotted a little mayfly. And this is the first mayfly I've seen this season. So very excited to get a photo here and keen to see what it looks like on this diffuser. It's going to be quite awkward to photograph because it is upside down, but at least it's in the shade, so I don't have to worry about that. So yeah, we're going to try and grab what it's on and then kind of like flip it over to make it a bit easier to photograph, and hopefully the mayfly doesn't fly away. Again, I'm really surprised at the results here, and it doesn't look perfect. As you can see, if you kind of nitpick, there's certain parts of the subject where there are visible hotspots, but it's nothing too crazy, nothing that's gonna sort of ruin the image and really take away from the shot and the subject. So yeah, not too bad for $10. Another bad thing about this diffuser is that there's nothing bridging the gap from the flash head to the front diffusion part. As you can see, I've got this little white card here that I've pulled out from the top of the flash, and pretty much every flash has one of these. And with using this diffuser, it's useful to make use of this because it prevents a little bit of light escaping upwards. But obviously there'll still be light escaping left, right and down, so not the best. And if a lot of light is escaping from your flash, that might mean you'll have to increase your flash power. And when you're shooting hundreds of images, one after another, doing macro photography, your flash can overheat quite quickly. So ideally, you want to be using quite a low flash power, as low as possible. But I feel like I've shot enough images with this diffuser now to know about its strengths and weaknesses. So I'm going to move on to the more expensive diffuser. So this is the Cygnustech diffuser. It's made by a guy called Brendan, who lives in Australia. And I've been using these for a few years now. But before I used this, I was using diffusers similar to the one I was shooting with just a moment ago. And just before I go off and get some photos using this, I'm going to show you how to set it up. It's made of 3 parts, so you've got your front diffusion panel, and then you've got this black bit, which bridges the gap from the flash to the diffusion panel. And then you've got a elastic band, and this just goes over your flash, the flash head. That's on there now. And then you've got these 2 bits here, and these just slide down the side of this rubber band. So it's a very quick and easily assembly. But to be honest, when you've got a diffuser on, you don't really need to take it off unless you're packing your bag away or whatever. Once it's on, I usually just keep it on, and I only take it off if I'm traveling and I need to pack it in my bag. And then with this part, you just hook it around the lens, and then you can tighten it with this thing on the side here. So this bit of string, and that's it. Your diffuser's ready to go, and you can adjust it so you can have it, you know, more towards the end of the lens. He also gives you a step-up ring for the end of the lens to stop the diffuser coming off, but I forgot to bring that out today. So I've got to make sure not to put my diffuser too close to the end. But usually I like to keep it around here, or even further back sometimes, because I feel like that gives some better results, especially when you're photographing things that are very close to the lens, because the angle of that diffusion is more suited for closer focusing subjects. So yeah, let's go out there and try and find some subjects to photograph with this diffuser. So I'm going to start things off by photographing that mayfly I photographed with the other diffuser, just because it's an easy first subject to start off with. So, and it's really chill. So let's get in here and get a photo. I've just taken a quick test shot using the exact same camera settings I used to photograph the same mayfly, but with the other diffuser, and it's actually overexposed. So this black part on the diffuser stops a lot of the light coming out, which means the flash loses less light. So I'm actually going to use 1/64 as opposed to 1/32 on the flash now, and that should hopefully be exposed. I know I said I was saving a results comparison until the end, but since I photographed the same mayfly using both diffusers, I might as well do a quick little comparison right now. So without even looking at both images on the computer, just looking at them on the back of my camera out in the field, I can already see that the more expensive diffuser has done a much better job at diffusing the light, and it looks a lot more pleasing and natural. But even though the more expensive diffuser has done a much better job than the cheaper one, I'd say the cheaper one has really surprised me. It's only $10 and you can get some really usable shots with it. But anyway, let's get back to getting some shots with the Cygnustech diffuser, because I've only got one so far. And I'm currently heading down to the spot where I found those damselflies earlier, because yeah, I really want to get a shot of one of those with this diffuser. I managed to get a couple decent shots of some damselflies there. It was quite hard because it is midday, it's really hot, and the damselflies are not staying still. But it was made a little bit easier by the fact I'm using a well-built diffuser. So with the other diffuser, I had to keep trying to hold it and make sure it didn't fall off the lens because it wasn't really secure. But with this diffuser, it's nicely secure and I can shoot one-handed and not have to worry about the diffuser falling off my camera. I've just found a cucumber spider on this leaf here, and most of the time when I find these, they're upside down, but this one's upright, so it's going to make it a lot easier to get a photo of. The sun is coming through the tree here, so when I photograph it, I'm going to rotate and try and shade the subject. I'm going to stand this way and then grab it, and then I will be shading the spider then. I went to 1/32 thinking that would be the perfect exposure, but that's actually too bright, so I'm going to go to 1/64 now. And I'm at f10 as well, so it shows that when you use a diffuser, you lose a lot less light and your flash is a lot more powerful. I'm really happy with how that shot turned out, and if it wasn't for using this diffuser, I don't think I would have got that shot, because with the other diffuser, I have to keep trying to make sure it doesn't fall off my lens. But with this one, I could put more focus and attention on getting my composition and holding the leaf, because obviously this thing is not gonna fall off the lens or flash. Like I mentioned before, there's less light escaping the flash because of this big black part here, which meant I was using 1/64 and I was close to 2 times magnification as well. If that was on the other diffuser, then I reckon I would have been at about 1/16, or at the very best 1/32. I've just found a thick-legged beetle on this plant down here, and this will be a great test for the diffusion, because these beetles are really reflective and metallic looking, and if you have poor diffusion, then it's going to look really bad when you're photographing something reflective. I'm surprised at how cooperative that beetle was, because usually when I photograph them, I get a couple shots and then they fly away or run away. I imagine if I photographed that with the cheap diffuser, the lighting wouldn't look so good and the lighting would reflect a lot on the shininess of the beetle. Now I've photographed a handful of subjects out in the field using both of the diffusers. I'm going to go back to the studio and photograph the same subjects using both diffusers so you can really see the difference. To compare the two, I'm going to be photographing this dead beetle, as it's a great test subject for the diffusers. I'm going to start by photographing the beetle using just the flash, so I've got a baseline, and then we can compare that to the cheap diffuser and then the expensive diffuser. I'm going to be shooting handheld, but I'm going to try my best to get the composition the exact same for each shot. There's our shot using just a flash, and as you can see the lighting looks horrible. It's not diffused at all, and there's loads of hot spots on the subject. I'm now going to get the exact same shot but using the cheap diffuser. So I'm just going to slip this over the front of the lens, and I'm going to try my best to get the same composition. Alright, I've got my shot framed up, so let's get the shot. As you can see, that's done a pretty good job, and there's far less hot spots in the shot now. And it just goes to show that using any sort of diffuser is better than using no diffuser for macro photography. But I'm now going to move on to the expensive diffuser, which is the Cygnustech diffuser. So let's get this shot framed up and get this shot. And yeah, there's our shot using the expensive diffuser. And it's going to be hard to tell a difference just by looking at the back of my camera. So I'm going to put these images on my computer, have a closer look, and then share my final thoughts. So after having a closer look at the images on my computer, there's a really clear difference between the three images. The shot taken with just the flash looks terrible. There's loads of hot spots on the subject, and because of that, you can't make out a lot of the details. But when you introduce the cheap diffuser, you can see a massive difference already. A lot of those hot spots are gone, and you can make out a lot more detail in the subject. But it's not perfect though, because as you can see in the eyes, it's a little bit too bright, and you lose a little bit of that texture in the eyes. And then in the metallic parts on the face, there's a lot of hot spots, and you lose some of that detail in the subject. And when I photographed that same beetle using the Cygnustech diffuser, you could really see a difference from the cheap diffuser. First off, if we look at the eyes, you can see it's not as bright and it's retained a lot of that detail. And then if we move over to the reflective parts in the middle of the face, you can see there's basically no hot spots. I searched around, but I couldn't find any hot spots. So it's done a really good job at retaining the detail there. So after this experiment, it's clear to see that the Cygnustech diffuser comes out on top. But I'm still surprised by the cheap diffuser. I think you can get some quite good results considering the price. So which diffuser do I recommend, the cheap one or the expensive one? I think if you're starting out macro photography, one of these cheap diffusers is great to get because you don't know if you like the genre of photography yet. So if you just spend 10 quid on a diffuser, it's a great way to just get started and learn how to do macro photography. But if you want to take macro photography more seriously and you want the best results, I'd definitely go ahead and buy a Cygnustech diffuser. And if you've got an expensive camera, lens and flash, I'd definitely go ahead and invest in one of these diffusers because you don't want to be using a cheap diffuser with a really expensive setup. And the good thing about these diffusers is that they can fit any camera system. So when you order online through the website, you'll be prompted to give your camera model, your lens model and your flash model so that the diffuser will fit your camera system perfectly. So I'll leave a link to Cygnustech diffusers down in the description, along with all the rest of my gear. And those are affiliate links, so if you buy through those, I'll get a small commission at no extra cost to you, which will help support the channel. But with that said and done, I'm going to end today's video here, so make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.